Hello everyone, it is an interesting episode of Tickets with Tay today because it's just me. Now don't leave this video because it's going to be an interesting one because I'm going to cover some cool topics such as my personal collecting goals, what I plan to grade, my thoughts on certain things, where I see the industry going, and then kind of touching on where I see kind of my refinement goals going forward with ticket collecting. So it's filled with lots of different things. I'm going to give some hot takes throughout, so listen along. I'm going to try refine this to become as short as possible, but we'll see how it goes. So let's talk about me. I mean, I probably should be on someone else's podcast, but I want your views. No, I guess there's not enough ticket collecting content creators, and also I'm happy to do it myself and sit in front of a camera and kind of discuss my thoughts. So let's get into it. Let's talk about my story on ticket collecting. So I think it begun when I first started collecting tickets, which was any event when I was growing up. So whether it was a music performance, an early Chelsea game, which is my team, I would keep them all. So that's kind of where my journey started, and it's evolved ever since. And I never really valued them very much. It would always be kind of shoved in my memory box or in, with some old programs, but I did keep them, and it's really fun and interesting to go over them, years later. It wasn't really until I think I was speaking with another collector. I actually collected Pokemon before that, and we were just talking, and he mentioned the PSA are now grading tickets. We thought it was new news at the time. Obviously, they'd been grading them many years before that, but we found it cool that that was possible, and he sent off some tickets for grading, and they came back like 3s and 4s, which I thought was just really cool that you could encapsulate these old memories that we had. So I headed straight back onto eBay and then kind of just to see how much they were really worth. Were they worth grading financially? And I strolled across some really other interesting tickets which caught my eye, and they weren't debuts or anything like that. More moments throughout time, which I thought were really cool. And that kind of sent me down the avenue of looking at other tickets, and I ended up picking my first ever ticket, which wasn't my own, and that was Cristiano Ronaldo's Manchester United debut. I believe I paid around £90, which wasn't cheap at the time, and obviously it eventually went up for thousands probably a year later, but I wasn't really tracking the market when it was at its highest. I just bought it for my own collection and thought it was really cool. And then it wasn't until I was picking up tickets here and there, but I wasn't really invested every day on eBay, looking at filters, finding other new and interesting ways to buy tickets, and then of course connect with others in the hobby, like I am now with the show, which is a great opportunity to voice obviously my own opinions and thoughts, but also hear the opinions of others and let them tell their stories, because I think it's quite a small industry. We speak quite a lot in Discord, Facebook groups, and for me, Instagram DM, but it's nice to have a platform here where we can voice our opinions to everyone else, and it's really interesting. So yeah, I eventually picked up more tickets, and they weren't of any value. And it wasn't until I picked up my first kind of valuable ticket, and it was a Messi Porto debut against the Messi game in which he made his friendly debut for Barcelona against Porto. And I believe I know for a fact I bought that off Long on Tickets, Sergio. He sold me that. It was a PSA 6, and I loved it, and I still love it to this day and still have it in my collection. So that's kind of where it all went wrong for me. And then I went and started buying all sorts of stuff, but only around the Messi and Ronaldo sort of niche. So I'd picked up Messi's Champions League debut, which everyone knows. I picked up his World Cup debut, picked up Ronaldo's World Cup debut, and kind of created sets in which I would, if I had it for Messi, I would also need it for Ronaldo. And those are two players that I grew up kind of loving and appreciating, and that is something that I kind of refine my goals to. Now I look at my collection now, and I have all sorts of different players and different sports and collections and different things like that, which is great, don't get me wrong, and it can actually be fantastic as trade bait, but it's not my kind of what got me into ticket collecting. So I do kind of worry that it sends me off a different path. I'm sort of started collecting some very weird and interesting tickets, which is cool. I think that's what's really, really interesting, but I do want to kind of refine it in a little bit, and go for some of the top tier tickets that in my generation I've looked up to and loved to, for the likes of, there's the Dan Headbutt, we're talking Cristiano Ronaldo's bicycle kick, Bale's kick where he ran off the pitch and came back on and scored that goal. And these moments that, for me, I know and love, the Troy Deeney Aguero goal. These goals and moments are what I love and what I want to start kind of go back to collecting. So yeah, that's where I stand now. But I'm collecting different things as well, and I am loving it. Don't get me wrong. When I say I want to refine, it probably means nothing because I'm still going to be buying anything that I think's cool or pops up. But maybe just my intentions with what I really, really want are now a bit more clear, and I understand what I'm after. I'm not going to put that publicly. I did mention the Aguero one, which I actually need, but yeah, I'm gonna keep that pretty private because I know, thankfully, I have an audience, but sometimes it's not the best thing to put that in front of everyone because, you know, they might hunt it down as well. But yeah, if you want to hunt that, do what you want. Anyway, my thoughts, some hot takes. So F1 tickets have kind of done really well at the moment, and I have a few in my collection, like Hamilton's home Mercedes debut, a random one, but it's signed, which I think is really cool. But with regards to F1, I don't think moments are particularly cool, maybe because I'm not interested in it so much, but on F1, I really focus on just debuts and debuts of the greats, so Hamilton and Verstappen, and that's it. Anything beyond that for me, I'm not really interested in. Anything historic, I don't really pay much interest in. Not that you shouldn't or should, but that's just my thoughts. Tennis, I absolutely love. I grew up around tennis, so for me, tennis is really, really interesting, and I like to collect it as much as possible. There's different tiers in which you can go for tennis. There's obviously the debut, which for tennis isn't the most desirable. For me, if I'm to rank number one, it's going to be first Grand Slam. Below that, maybe first tournament that they won. Probably an ATP tour is probably second. And then third might be a debut. The thing is with debuts though, for tennis in particular, especially if they are a youngster, they would have made their debut on a smaller court within a specific tournament, which would have meant that access to that specific court wouldn't have been ticketed. It would have been a grounds pass, or any ticket within that event would have granted access to kind of just tag along or watch it. There won't have been many people watching it, more likely than not. I know that's definitely the case for Nadal, and I believe the same for Federer. So yeah, be aware of that, and that's probably why I rank, you know, the first Grand Slam first, beyond anything else. So that kind of, when you look at football, is the debut of tennis ticket collecting. Moments are great. The 2008 Wimbledon final is a huge moment, which I absolutely love. I think the 2023, which has just passed, Wimbledon final is huge as well. I love that. So that's something that I'm collecting as well. But yeah, each sport for me has a specific nuance which I like to collect. It isn't just the debut. I like to go in different avenues. So when we look at boxing, for me, it's a big moments thing. I'm not really interested in debuts, although they are cool. And if I picked it up, I'd absolutely love it. But my main focus with boxing is moments. So we look at, you know, Rumble in the Jungle, Thriller in Manila. I know there's been some massive fights like Klitschko, AJ, which I love to collect. So those sort of things and moments are far more important than potentially debuts in boxing. I know Fav has the Tyson Fury debut ticket, which is absolutely incredible. I love it. But I don't find it as interesting as a big fight from his. Potentially the Usyk fight that's coming up now would be a really cool ticket to own, in my opinion. So boxing is really moments based rather than debut based, which football and soccer absolutely is. So what are other thoughts? Music I really enjoy. I think they're really, really cool. And you know what? I'm going to go with last performance for music. It's probably my most interesting. When we look at like Michael Jackson, Amy Winehouse, their last performance, Elvis Presley, really captures my eye. I find those really interesting, probably more than any debut. The only counter to that, or kind of leveling in importance from last performance for me, would be the first time that specific artist performed their biggest song live. So if you look at Ed Sheeran for an example, potentially I think his biggest song was Shape of You. Maybe the first time that was played live would be a really cool ticket to own. I think that was a 59th Grammy Award, was the first time that was performed live. So stuff like that in terms of their biggest song and its first live performance would be really cool. Yeah, and that's the only thing that levels from the last performance. First performances are also cool, but they're obviously difficult to find. Maybe their first concert, but by then they could have done, you know, loads of individual performances, and by then it's not really cool. So yeah, last really captures my eye. When you look at Michael Jackson, the last performance is really, really cool. especially since no one knew it would be his last performance. I think the ticket was 2006, and then he went on to die 3 years later. So really an unknown one that was. So very few people would have picked it up. I know for Elvis, he unfortunately suddenly died as well. You can look at Led Zeppelin as well, a huge band. They've made kind of some tribute performances. There's one in 2007, I believe. But as a complete band, they stopped in the 80s, I believe. So really cool to kind of collect those last complete performances. That's my thoughts on music. There's obviously different niches like movies. I think movies kind of had a hot increase in price probably about 8 months ago. And those, Japanese premiere stubs started coming out, and the IPO is great, and for good reason. The prices went up quite a lot, but I don't think that is the coolest thing. For me, I like, you know what, I'm going to say it, and this is my opinion, but maybe the opening night tickets are actually cooler for me, or the opening day. The kind of terminology changes on listing to listing, but the opening day, opening night performance is for me the coolest, rather than the premiere. Less people kept them. They tend to look a little bit different. The IPO isn't as good, but I think they're a little bit more rare, niche. You don't see them very often, and they're kind of open to like niche cinema. So yeah, for me, I love like those niche opening night tickets rather than the premiere. But don't get me wrong, premieres are really cool. The only thing will be is that premieres that happen in different countries at different times. So sometimes it can be hard to pinpoint the first one, but opening day for me is really cool just because it's general access rather than premieres, which often tend to be specifically for VIP, so to say. So yeah, with movies, that's definitely my thing. What other collectibles have I been picking up recently? I don't know. Yeah, I think I've kind of covered all the sports which I've got interested in. Something that I will kind of touch on will be Luke Littler's Luke Littler's darts games. He's definitely helped raise so much awareness for the sport, and I think that can't go unnoticed. And I take it to one of his first wins, or the infamous final that he had at the age of 16 would be a really, really cool ticket to have. I know that the same applies for there's chess tournaments throughout time which people love to collect, and I think that maybe the first time, if it can be ticketed, I'm not entirely sure. There has to be some extra research done on that, but the first time an AI computer beat a human in chess would be really, really interesting. Snooker and pool I'm not too interested in, but I'm sure there's some cool collectibles. We can look at like the monarchy, the Queen's Jubilee and things like that are really cool, but the supply can be pretty high because everyone knows what's going on. For me, I really find the ones that are most interesting to be the moments in time where people didn't really appreciate that this moment was going to be such a huge moment, and often didn't keep the memorabilia surrounding that. So that's why debuts are great, and also last performances are great, because we didn't really know or could anticipate that these moments would happen. And of course, the older they are, the less likely they would have been kept, because people just didn't value things like that at the time. Whereas now people are aware that potentially a debut of some sort, could have some value and would often keep it. So throughout time, the older, the less likely they are to keep it, the lower the supply, and then the more I seem to want it. So that often is the case. But there's a lot of things to kind of process. There's a lot of information. I'm looking into hopefully grading some of my stuff soon. I've got some really interesting tickets which I'll show in a bit, potentially in this video, of some tickets that I love. Lots of Hand of God tickets, which I think just throughout time will perform well financially, and then hopefully I can use as trade bait or potentially sell and buy some other stuff kind of surrounding Messi and Ronaldo, which I really, really love. So that's kind of my perspective. I am looking to refine my collection, but I've got lots and lots and lots sitting around everywhere, like I'm sure everyone else does. But yeah, I think within 15 minutes, I've kind of touched on quite a few different topics, my thoughts on those. What I want to move on now to is kind of population. So how the population will change with time. I truly believe there's still a lot of tickets out there that need to be dug out. I think if you think the supply is peaked, I think you're absolutely wrong, because I think there's still a lot of programs that are sitting around in people's garages and lofts and stuff like that they would have just kept, and then there's still probabilities that tickets are in there. So don't lose hope. Although they're pop 1 at the moment, or even pop 0 on some occasions, they absolutely will come out. And as a collector, it's our job to kind of make sure we hunt these out. Just refreshing on eBay isn't gonna accelerate the process at all. We have to kind of make a conscious effort to try and find that, whether that's, you know, garage sales, asking around. If it's a Chelsea Liverpool game, for example, that you're after, you go into the Chelsea fans and put messages on group chats and stuff like that and really hunt them down. So there's so much research that can be done into identifying new ways. If you're happy to pay a little bit more, then obviously networking with others in the community is a very interesting way to do that. If you want to get a cheaper price, then that kind of bargain hunter mentality can be applied. Potentially going to old ticket vendors and resellers, and potentially they've kept them. There's the opportunity to go on Facebook, group chats, and message in there. There's thousands of collectors of different things. You could type in Chelsea fans, Barcelona fans, and kind of have a message around. Fav, I know, has talked openly about this many times, which is going and tagged locations for specific events and seeing who tuned in, messaging to see if they kept their ticket. There's also kind of online Google approaches you can take where people have submitted photos of the events and you can kind of see who was there and drop them a message. But yeah, the supply is so much higher than the PSA pop. Not always. There is obviously niche examples of when like there was genuinely a few tickets out there. I believe the Messi Espanyol game might be that case from the research I've done so far. Not necessarily true. There could absolutely be a lot that are found. And as you know, for ticket collecting, when one come out of the woodwork, they often come in pairs. So if you do see one sold on eBay, drop them a message, and there is, no, I'm not going to guarantee it, but there's a probability that they have another one. And damn near 30% of the time that is the case. So make sure that happens. And if it is a pop 1 and that does happen, best believe it could be pop 4, pop 5 if they had a selection of 3 or 4 tickets. So if you are gambling on investing in pop 1s, it could pay off, absolutely, if it stays a pop 1. But if one is found, there is absolutely a probability that a few could be come out the cracks at that moment in time. So definitely be cautious of that, but also use that as excitement and interest to go hunt down more, because they do come in pairs, and that's a great opportunity for a personal collection, pick up one and maybe sell on another. But yeah, maybe what I want to talk about next then is the tiers in ticket collecting. Now, it's a really difficult topic to talk on as an overall thing, because every ticket has different populations and rarity, which affects my interest in that. But when I talk about tiers, I mean, you know, God tier or top tier will probably be in football a debut, and then there's international debuts, moments, etc, etc. Now, I've made a video on this on my Instagram, but maybe my opinion has changed and maybe you haven't seen it. So here's my take on that. I think the top tier, we have to start, if we're looking at football or soccer, however you look at it, it has to be the professional debut for any athlete. Now, if we're looking at Messi or Ronaldo, maybe below that plays the part of friendly debuts or first team debuts, however you want to call it, or first team, first appearance, or whatever you want to label that as. Just because for Messi and Ronaldo, it can't be ignored. It's the beginning of their illustrative kind of career. But below that, I would probably be inclined to put international debut, specifically if they have had a very good international career like Lionel Messi has, now winning the World Cup. He can't be, kind of, his Argentina career can't be ignored, and the debut marks the beginning of that appearance. So we're now looking at pro debut, international debut. I think below that could be, now depending on how big the moment is, a moment. So for Maradona, Hand of God, that is a massive moment and a massive ticket. I know Messi's goal with Getafe is definitely kind of in that moments tier as his best goal ever. But again, that's subjective. And if you are looking from an investment perspective, you want to be as objective as possible and not have, you know, opinions considered on that. So it's a risky play, but I think, for my personal opinion, that those moments are really interesting. We also have then below that, I would say maybe first goal. So we're now looking at pro debut, we've got international debut, we've got moments, then first goal, specifically if they are a person who has scored a lot of goals. And this is why I have to be very generic, because there's defenders, there's goalkeepers, there's players that haven't scored many goals but are great players. So looking at the likes of Messi and Ronaldo, first goal has to play a massive part in that. As a sub niche, could be their first ever first team goal. I wouldn't call it a debut goal or anything like that. I would avoid the word debut, but their first senior goal or first team goal is a pretty big moment in that. But for goals, is not as important as the first pro goal, because that stays on the record. And the likes of Messi and Ronaldo, who have scored hundreds of goals on their record, you want the first one. So for Messi, it's Albacete, Barcelona, 2004. Ronaldo was a Sporting goal as well. So that's what I would consider. And then anything below that, below first goal, might be, World Cup debut, depending if they've won the World Cup or not, of course. Some love the Champions League debut. For me, it's not up there on some of the top ones. But yeah, I think that's the sort of tiers that we're looking at now for soccer. And I've mentioned previously in this video for different sports how that aligns. For F1, it's going to be a debut, not so much moments. For boxing, it's definitely a moments is top for me. So yeah, just understanding that, and that's my opinion. You make your own decision. That's completely up to you. That's just my thoughts and opinions. And now the next topic I want to touch on is the use of the word debuts. Now, it is such an overused word. If I was part of the PSA team and was, kind of scratched everything that's done before, the word debut could only be used in a professional environment. But now it's been used for friendlies, like their first appearance for their second team, and it's being used as a debut. I don't think it's particularly fair. However, because that still exists, because the PSA have now done that many times, the word debut can be used and floated around. So that is just an opportunity to potentially make some money on it. I don't like the idea of that. I would stay away from it. But the word debut, if I was PSA, I would scratch, and that can only be used for professional games. Because, as an example, if you're in the Discord, Maradona played a benefit game for Tottenham. That could be officially described as a Tottenham debut, although he only played one game. And there's different nuances. Were they signed as a contract? Was it an under-21s game against a first-team game that was still a pro game? So lots of different nuances within that. So I think I've kind of covered everything within 30 minutes that I've wanted to. It's kind of a Q&A without anyone actually asking me questions. It's just some of my thoughts. So maybe in the comment section, drop any questions you do have, and I can make a V2 on this video about anything that you kind of comment below. Any questions that you have, be really interesting to kind of touch on them. But yeah, thank you for listening. Please, as always, like and subscribe. That helps just build awareness for the hobby and spread the eyes. Maybe share this to a friend or in a group chat or a Discord channel or a Facebook chat to raise more awareness around the hobby. I've got a upcoming podcast that I'm recording in 2 days with a really interesting guest, which I look forward to sharing. But I thought I'd give my own opinion. It's never just me. So I've kind of sold you my journey and story, and hopefully you guys find that interesting. If you don't, then, I don't know, dislike this video if you want. But if you did enjoy it, please like, and I will see you later. Thank you everyone for listening along. And it's Tickets with Tay and just Tay. So yeah, take care guys. Thank you very much.